Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday once again, and it's time for your weekly dose of catalog and cocktails. It's where we get together weekly, have a live hangout, and we have an honest, no BS, non salesy conversation about enterprise data management, usually with a tasty beverage in hand. I am Tim Gasper, product nerd and product manager over at data.world, and joined by Juan Sequeda.
Hello, I'm Juan Sequeda, principal scientist here at data.world. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. It is almost Thanksgiving. I'm looking forward to stuffing myself with lots of food and drinking all this wonderful booze in my house. What about you?
Yeah, as always, it is a pleasure to take a pause during the week at the end of a Wednesday and just sit down and chit chat. And this particular topic is going to be an interesting one. So I'm really excited about that. But before we dive in, just as a reminder, please join us in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. What are you drinking? Also, join us on our community Slack at slack.data.world. We're really excited to continue the conversations over there. So, Tim, what are you drinking?
I am keeping it simple. I am having a margarita. So I got 2 parts tequila, 1 part lime, half orange liqueur, and half syrup. This is the recipe that I've decided I like the best. So what about you? What are you drinking?
I'm running out of. I need to go buy more booze. I have this is the last whiskey I have right now. It's Cavalan. It's a Taiwanese whiskey. It's a port cask finish. It's a really, really delicious. So I'm enjoying that right now. And one side thing is that you'll see me on camera. I'm going to be drinking water out of a bottle of beer, which I collect these. So it's not I'm not drinking beer and drinking even though that's nothing wrong with that. This is just
oh yeah, no, that's totally fine. But yeah, just to make sure it's clear, you're not doubling up right now. So well, cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. So I know today we were looking forward to kind of nerding out. We were talking about ecosystem yesterday, and my daughter wants to join us in this conversation as well. Technology is very fun for her. And today we wanted to zoom in a particular part of that ecosystem conversation.
Well, this is a topic that I just find weird and interesting, the topic of master data management. And it's something that has been around for so long. And I mean, long decades, right? And it's something that there causes a lot of confusion, I think. It also brings up questions of, is this something that is still a thing today or not? But so we kind of want to break this down. And usually when we have these catalog and cocktails, to be honest, Tim and I, we don't do a lot of kind of prepare ourselves. This is all unscripted. This is just kind of, we're just talking like we were 2 guys at a bar or something like that. But for this one, we actually kind of did prepare ourselves because it's just it's all over the place. And it's still all over the place in a bit. So here, just kind of our goal here is to just share our thoughts about kind of the research we've been doing. And then we're really excited about having that conversation with everybody afterwards. So the first thing is, what is MDM? What is master data management? So Tim, what's your honest, no BS, non-salesy definition of MDM? Because everything you read around there, from all blogs and all vendors and the Gartners of the world, it's a lot of BS-y, salesy stuff. So give it to me. Your honest, no BS, non-salesy definition of MDM.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, just to be clear, we're talking about master data management, not metadata management. Every once in a while at data.world, we get these RFIs or RFPs where they're like, we're looking for an MDM solution. And we're like, well, we're looking at the bullet points. We're like, you mean metadata management, right? But yes, we're talking about master data management today. And before I give my answer, I'm going to take a sip of liquid courage here because I feel like MDM is very complex. But I'm going to give a very simple answer, which is that I think of MDM as fancy data integration. It is very fancy data integration.
Hey, I think that's actually the best definition I've heard. So kind of quoting here, we were looking at a bunch of definitions and looking at what Gartner says, for example. So how they define master data management. MDM it's a technology oriented business discipline. And I think I find that interesting. And I like that. It's a discipline. It's not just a tool, right? And where the business and the IT, they have to work together. And the goal there is to be able basically to ensure uniformity of the data, accuracy, stewardship, governance, semantic consistency, and accountability of an enterprise offered official shared master data. That's a mouthful there, but
yeah, there's a lot to think
about.
If
we break that down very quickly, it is a discipline. So it's not just a tool technology; it's a discipline. It's where you have different people working together. You have your business and your IT, and you really want to be able to ensure a bunch of stuff around your master data, which is uniformity, accuracy, stewardship, governance, etc. So let's unpack this. Let's unpack what master data management means. You go. Tim.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that those are some great definitions there, and obviously are a little bit more sophisticated than fancy data integration. But I think what is kind of important and clear, obviously, is what you mentioned, that it's more than just a tool, right? It is a discipline, often considered connected to governance within an organization, right? Just particularly governing sort of the data and the unification of the data. And there are some key concepts that usually come to play here in terms of not just sort of the process elements, which you kind of mentioned, right, about stewardship and governance and things like that. But if you look specifically at some of the data processes and some of the technology elements, some phrases and terms that you may hear is, first of all, there's usually a connect or a profiling component, right? So I'm connecting to data sources. I'm trying to understand the schemas of those data sources, understand the shape of that data. There's usually what most folks in the industry term match and merge, right? Like I need to match that these two things are related to each other, and I want to be able to merge that data in a smart way, right? There's usually the concept of a golden record, right? Bringing all this data together into a record and having sort of a master concept. And then being able to analyze and monitor and manage sort of that process, right? And part of that, for example, is things like exception management. So there's a lot of things that go there, and ultimately, right, you're mastering something, right? So master data management typically is going to center around customers or products or suppliers or households, or you imagine for your given industry or your particular data types, what sorts of things you may be mastering around, where a golden record or a unified view would be very valuable.
So let's talk about this whole golden record, and this is something that we hear all the time, right? Which is the single source of truth, the single version of truth, and I can imagine, and there are scenarios where you really need to go strive for that. We need to have this one single version of the truth. But I've been in conversations and people who are living in another camp, and they say, we will never have a single version of truth. That's impossible. Let's stop saying that. Is that really possible? Can we actually achieve that? Should we actually achieve that? Or should we really just strive to have different versions of the truth with all the particular context around it? What's your take on that, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think that oftentimes master data management comes from the initial goal of, hey, let's create a single source of truth around X, right? And I think that this really has to do a lot with the complexity of your business, right? If you have an overly simple sort of data situation in your company, a lot of times master data management actually may be overkill, and it makes sense to just think about simply data integration and sort of building out your data warehouse, kind of having your, a well thought through model of how data comes together for that. If you are a very complicated organization, I think that's especially where people feel the pain of and the need of master data management. For example, you think of companies that do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, but oftentimes their situation is so complex that it's not really as simple as just saying, hey, let's implement master data management. It's an ongoing war, a 100-year war that they're going to be trying to go and solve this problem, right? And so single sort of view is part of the goal, but often it's more a North Star than it is something that's super attainable for those medium and high complexity companies.
Do you see that? I mean, so I've worked with in organizations where we have accomplished basically a single, like the master view of customers. But then you think about it, it's like, it wasn't that big of a, I mean, it was complicated, but not that complicated. So it kind of felt like this is possible and we should go do it. But in some other places you realize, well, I don't think this is even possible, because there is no way in hell that we're going to get everybody to organize and agree upon these definitions, because everybody agrees that within their own context, their definition is the right one, but there is not one right definition for the organization, because everybody has different lenses around things. So, I mean, what experiences do you have about trying to implement a single version of a truth or not?
I mean, it's been exactly what you're saying, right? I think that usually when master data management is most successful, you implement it in a relatively tight and specific context and given a specific use case, right? And folks often approach master data management with a few different potential architectures. And if you're trying to create sort of a consolidated hub, or you're trying to sort of push good reference information out to sort of a bunch of spokes, a bunch of different systems, that can be a better approach to start. But then again, you know, what some companies will try to do is get more complicated, and then it becomes more challenging as you get more complicated.
Yeah. So our friend Shane here is on the chat saying something really, really nice, which is, we can never have a single version of the truth, because you say we often have different contexts of what the truth is. So for example, how many active customers do we have versus how many customers do we have? And as I always say, don't boil the ocean. I think that applies also for MDM. Now, what I find interesting here is that notion of active. And I think, as we're going to touch in a second, active starts going into that, into our definitions, like into the metadata, which is a question. It's like, how much is master data management and metadata management kind of converging or not? Essentially, if you look at it, it's like you really want to have a bunch of facets over your master data, right? Here is this notion, here's this high level of a customer, but we have all these facets that we can start drilling down and stuff. So I think that's something that we want to touch in a bit about how this is evolving. But let me go turn directions a little bit, and let's talk about from the technical side. I think traditionally we've seen master data management, kind of the old school is, you got to define a bunch of rules, right? And there's a bunch of fuzzy matches to go do the record linkage to know that these two people are the same and so forth. And now I think we're seeing more an evolution of, oh, it's AI, it's machine learning. And I'm really curious, in your experience, Tim, is with all this craze of ML and machine learning, how much is machine learning truly, genuinely contributing to master data management? How much of it is just marketing, blah, blah, blah? Because I just feel it's like everybody's just slapping the term ML on everything, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think that it's interesting in that what we've seen with master data management is kind of similar to metadata management, in the sense that, you know, there are certain specific cases where machine learning can be helpful. Like, for example, in a master data management scenario, you imagine you're trying to, determine, like, is this a legitimate name? And, you know, is John and Johnny, you know, the same, but John and Jim are different? You know, there are certain cases where things like machine learning and NLP and an AI can be accelerants to creating some of these different rules. However, in most cases, you know, your business data is dirty, right? And there's going to be some degree of handwritten rules no matter what. So what we're finding is that, you know, machine learning helps, but it's not completely replacing the idea that in master data management, you do need to navigate and sort of codify your business logic to really have it be effective.
So what then do we not consider master data management? Because, I mean, a lot of the things, I mean, you started out saying this is just fancy data integration, right? So is MDM a subset of data integration? But what is not, where's that line? Now, when are things not considered MDM? So for example, one thing that we discuss is master data management is not just a tool of technology. It is also about the processes, right? It's this discipline where you have to have, understand the people between who are using the data. So it's not just a tool. It's not just a technology.
Yeah, so it's definitely bigger than a tool, right? It's a discipline. It's a bigger part of governance. It fits in with a broader set of things like stewardship and like metadata, which we'll talk about in a second. It's also not a data warehouse, right? I think sometimes folks think about master data management and they think about sort of a data hub strategy or a data warehouse strategy or data unification strategy. And they assume that, oh, like master data management means that like I could just put all of my data into master data management and it's going to like just unify all my data. It's like, fancy data warehouse kind of thing. And while there are some things that it can really help with around those use cases, for example, like you may put a bunch of event data, like we do at data.world, where we have a ton of events that are happening in our platform. We're going to put that all in our data warehouse. We're not building a master view around events, right? We are trying to build sort of a master view around customers, right? And in some cases, events happen and may inform sort of our view of customers, right? If you're kind of doing a rolling delta on certain things. And so just to show that there's an interplay and a difference between data warehousing, master data management, and there's probably a lot more that's going into your data lake and your data warehouse than master data management, which is really more focused on the golden record.
So comment on the chat. So John says MDM tends to be more of a vertical solution oriented data integration. Like it's data integration to solve a problem with customer 360. And that's a great example. I like that because it is, like you say, it's fancy data integration, but for something that's a bit more focused within like customer 360, which is kind of the big popular thing. And then Mark is saying it sometimes feels that MDM is a numpty response to poor data quality. So for example, most important business purposes might benefit from a confidence slider on matching so that the confidence level can match the use case. And yeah, that's a really good observation right there.
Yeah, that's actually a good point about data quality. And I think that you get into various tensions, which we'll talk about more through the rest of the session here. But one tension is between data quality and master data management, right? Is that a lot of the job of master data management is to deal with disconnected, disparate, and often very dirty data. And man, if you just had that customer input have a validation in it to make sure that email addresses were properly shaped, that is going to help master data management be less complicated or maybe irrelevant. So that's obviously that's an overly simplistic example, but the interplay between upstream garbage in, garbage out, and the amount of work that you have to do in the hub is they're very tightly connected.
All right, so we brought up already multiple times the whole aspect of metadata management, so another MDM. So how much is master data management connected to the metadata management, right? There seems to be like some very thin line that when you start doing master data management, you end up doing more of something broader, which is a master data management. We were talking about governance, we're talking about data stewardship. Where is this line?
I think it's a little bit fuzzy, right? I think that obviously, with metadata management, it's focused on things like finding, trusting, understanding, and aligning around the data and the meaning of that data, right? So you've got things like your data dictionaries, you've got your sort of your index of where everything is, you make it searchable. We obviously advocate, doing sort of a productized approach or a data product manager kind of approach to data. When you're looking at the metadata realm, it's kind of clearer what the distinction is around sort of finding and working with the metadata versus master data management, which it's more dealing with sort of mastering and manipulating and transforming or sort of deciding on what wins and what loses around data itself, right? So if you're looking at metadata versus data, the distinction's a little clearer. There's still some overlap, right? Entity resolution and things like that. But if you look at data catalog as not just being a metadata catalog, but also being a data catalog, then obviously there's more parallels, right? Connecting to data, profiling the data, reference data, sample data, being able to query data, potentially do a little bit of transformation of data, prep of data, building knowledge, building meaning. Obviously you're not trying to create, master records in a data catalog or in a metadata management solution, but you can see how there's some shared services and shared capabilities across the two different technology platforms.
So are we going to see an evolution to that? And which leads me kind of to think about, let's compare the categories, right? We have master data management as a category, right? They have their own Gartner Magic Quadrant, master data management. There is the metadata management, which actually just was released today, I think. Then you have one other category, which is the data catalogs. I think the Forrester Wave released that last week. So there's data catalogs, metadata management, master data management. How is this all evolving? And is the are the master data management tools evolving to be data catalogs, or the other way around? You just said that in a data catalog, you're bringing in the metadata, you're accessing the data, but you're not necessarily creating master data within a data catalog. Is that going to change? Are we going to go see data catalogs incorporating master data management features? Are these companies going to merge? I mean, I think about Informatica, for example, right? On one side of the spectrum, you have Informatica that says we do everything. So we got a data catalog, we do your ETL, and we got your master data management, all that stuff. So Informatica will say, yes, we're doing everything, right? But I don't know, where's it going to go?
I mean, you can definitely see how these things are complementary to each other, right? And we've got customers who are asking us to integrate in deep ways between a data catalog solution and a master data management solution because of these overlaps, because data quality and profiling and reference data and a lot of these things are they sit in this overlap area, right? And why not do the work once and then have an information radiator that kind of connects and collects all of these different things, right? So obviously there's something that's complementary there. I think it's interesting that what's different is obviously the use cases, right? The use cases are different from each other, but there's some shared technology. And you even see, for example, in the Forrester wave for machine learning data catalogs a couple of years ago, actually Reltio was included in that and they were seen as a leader. And Reltio spent a lot of time being like, no, we're not a data catalog. Like we actually don't want to be thought of as that because that's not the use case we're solving. Even if a lot of our technology applies to that, it just goes to show sort of, why these things are so connected to each other. And I do think that in the future, as you think about how these platforms evolve, if you're looking for a way to have active metadata that impacts your business in not just conceptual ways, but literal ways that affect the data itself, I think that master data management does start to become a little bit part of the data catalog mission and vice versa. So complementary, definitely, and part of a suite of capabilities in the future seems like that would make a lot of sense.
So to throw another buzzword around there is this new thing called the data fabric that we're hearing, right? All the pundits are talking about this. And it seems to me that this term data fabric is really encompassing, is bringing in together what is supposed to be a data catalog, what is supposed to be a lot of data integration, what is supposed to be a lot of master data management and access control. So I think the way we have been integrating and managing enterprise data over the last 20 years have been all these kind of separated solutions. And we've started to realize that, okay, these two things need to work together. So A and B needs to work together, B and C, and then C and D, hey, but D and F, and blah, all this together. And at some point it's like, wait, it's too hard. I mean, I don't want to even integrate my data point to point, but now I need to go use all these different tools point to point to integrate my data. And it's like, so eventually, I believe, and how this is going to evolve, is that these categories are going to merge, and it's either one company is going to buy another one, right? Some Informatica is going to buy more companies, or these companies are going to merge. But essentially, having every single tool separately, it's just too annoying. And I think we need to get out of this.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Juan, and I think that. If you squint a little bit and you think, okay, data catalog, data virtualization, master data management, and let's assume John made a good point in the chat here, data integration is a key part, right? And then you add in some sort of access control, right? Sort of a unified idea of who's allowed to access what. When you combine these 3 or 4 or 5 things together, like you kind of cover like an 80-20 rule around sort of the meta layer around your data systems. And I think that's where the data fabric concept, even though I think you as well tend to be very skeptical of what that means, or that a platform could ever be a data fabric for listeners, I'm doing air quotes here, the combination of these things provides the value that one might try to gain from a unified data fabric.
Yeah. Well, let's keep talking about some other stuff that we think are going to evolve. So I think naturally things are going to the cloud, right? That's going to be a natural evolution. All these tools are going to the cloud. People say that they're cloud. They say, quote, I'm also air quotes, they're cloud native, but really if I think you are truly cloud if you don't have to ask about anything. Like if your vendor is saying, yeah, we're cloud native, but you get 2 releases a year, well, guess what? You're not cloud native, period. So please be, I think like on an MDM tools, I think, correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think Reltio is like the only one that's like truly cloud native.
Yeah, Reltio, and then there's Informatica Cloud, but that's that's part of their solution is available in the cloud. So it's really Reltio is the main player there in terms of cloud MDM.
So another thing that's going to evolve, but it's going to evolve. There's going to be some interesting tension. Is the whole culture, I guess, basically around data ops and master data management. So I'm just thinking right now is in a master data management tool, right? You're creating all these rules to be able to go link it, to go integrate data and having all these matching rules. At the same time, you're having all these really cool tools like DBT, right? Who are also doing some transformations. And then you're also having tools that do data lineage, like our friends Manta that they do the lineage. And like, eventually all that stuff needs to get together. So you can imagine that, hey, that stuff that's being done in the MDM tool should be done also in tools like DBT. Like, I ponder, will DBT offer an open source data mastering solution later on, right? I don't know, but I think those types of that data ops and master data management, that's something that's going to be an interesting quote unquote tension going on.
Yeah, regardless of whether it's DBT or something else, there's this whole troop of data ops tools that are emerging. The data ops approach to master data management is going to be something, it's going to be an interesting question. Like, how does that fit into the architecture, right? I think another big thing, and obviously this is one that you'll probably have some strong thoughts on, Juan, I think, is around knowledge management, right? Both master data management and metadata management, and in general, sort of where the industry is trying to go is to build up knowledge, to actually embed meaning into what we're doing as a company. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think, so we talk about metadata and data, like my whole crawl, walk, and run, right? Crawling, let's go understand what is the data we have, and in order to do that, we have to go crawl the metadata. Then after that, we have to go access to data. And once you start doing that process, you learn so much from how the data is being used, by whom, how it's being prepared. And that is going to lead us to understanding what this data actually means. And what I always say is, like, let's be transparent about it. Let's share where the skeletons are in the closet. And that is being able to kind of make knowledge also a first-class citizen. And all of that needs to get integrated together. So I think definitely we're going to see an evolution of knowledge management within all of this MDM tools and metadata management tools too. The other one is, and I think this is kind of the quote unquote obvious one, but it's sad that we have to bring it up all the time because people forget, is business value. Everything we do that we should be doing should be focused on making sure that we're providing value to the business. That's how we avoid boiling the ocean. So I think that's something that I'm hoping, I really strongly hope that when the companies are going off to go buy things, to make sure that you're defining success, not from a technical perspective, but also from a social perspective, understanding what the business wants at the end of the day, because heck, they're the ones who are going to tell me if this stuff works or not for the business.
Yep. What metrics are you driving things by, right? And that'll tell you a lot in terms of use cases and in terms of success.
And I think another one, I believe, kind of evolve is industry focus. So I think we'll see more data integration tools or MDM focus, not just like we said, MDM is a data integration for 360 view of customers, but even for industry verticals. This is for insurance and so forth. So I think that's something else.
Yeah, like we have a customer of ours that we work on where it is a sort of an identity solution where we're kind of building, entity resolution around identities. And that is an example of something that, is founded in metadata, but also has a strong metadata aspect as well. And it's very industry oriented, right? And so, that's an area where business value becomes clear and the solution is a little more straightforward because you've got that context of that specific use case.
So finally, I believe that everything we're talking about here, this whole term MDM, master data management, I'm seeing this new term called the identity graph. And I think this is going to start to replace a little bit of what you want to be able to go do with MDM, right? You use MDM to go customer 360. We're now seeing this term identity graph, which leads me to think, and obviously I'm biased here, but all of this all together, you combine metadata management, data management, master data management, all this stuff, it's a graph. And I think this is where the knowledge graphs come in. Integrating all this data, integrating all our metadata, integrating all our data, creating these 360-degree views of our master data. It's all about connections. So you might as well start modeling and representing your data as a graph. And I think this is where the knowledge graph technology comes into play. Naturally, I believe that the final evolution of all of this is we're going to do knowledge graphs.
I think that's right. And I think that the problems aren't changing. Right. That's maybe we're transitioning to takeaways here, right? The problems aren't changing, right? Data integration issues, data silo issues, data brawling, don't have a single view of the customer. We've been having these problems for 60 years, right? So the problems aren't different. And it's not necessarily that, knowledge graph or graph is coming in to create this brand new problem space. I know we get excited about the new sexy stuff, right? AI, ML, computer vision, right? But man, we got plenty of problems in the data integration, metadata management, master data management realm. And, something like knowledge building and graph can have a strong impact even within those domains and those disciplines as they exist today.
So we're 30 minutes fly by as always, Tim. So you close this up. What is your takeaway?
I think that's my takeaway is that, the impact that graph can have and specifically that the fault lines around all these different tools is fading kind of, right? It's very interesting to see that, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, master data management, enterprise data warehouse, enterprise ETL, right? It was very sort of segmented, but now that, new agile data ops tools are coming to play, cloud vendors are coming in with, best of breed solutions that you then combine together. The lines are blurring a little bit, and I think it's making it extra hard for enterprise architects and for chief data officers to be able to navigate it all. It goes back to that whole ecosystem conversation we had last week.
Yeah. So we started out this conversation is master data management. Is it hot or not? My takeaway is the old school, no. The new school, yes, because the new school is going to evolve and connect it all together. Master data management, metadata management, data management, entity resolution, graph mappings all together. It's all connected. It's all a graph. It's all a knowledge graph. So I genuinely believe that if you're going off and looking for your next tools, the next systems you're going to be working with in your enterprise, they need to be powered by knowledge graphs. Tim, have a great Wednesday. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Cheers, everyone.